Hey there, gamers, racers, and motorsports fans. Welcome to another video here on A+ Sim Racing.
Left side.
In this video, we're going to be taking a look at RaceRoom's newest car, the FRX-22. So that's RaceRoom's interpretation of this season's Formula One car. Now, it's not licensed content, so it won't be any specific team's car. It's basically this. So even though we don't get to drive the car of a specific team for this F1 season, we do get a car that approximates an average between the entire grid, what the FIA intended for the regulations. So it's a 1.6 liter V6 turbo hybrid. I haven't tested on any oval tracks to see if the MGU-H actually works, but I know that the MGU-K works just fine. DRS also works just fine. And in case you were wondering, yes, it does porpoise on the long high-speed straights if you don't get a good setup to stop it from hitting the ground when it stalls from the aero, just like it does in the real world version of the car. So let's take a look at the RaceRoom store and walk through purchasing this content. So first of all, always go to the RaceRoom website to buy VRP and then use VRP to make a purchase in-game. It's always cheaper. It'll save you at least 10%. So if you go to the store and you click on the banner for the new FRX-22 car, it'll bring you to this page where you can take a look at all the liveries. You can see I went through and purchased a few of them. I was honestly hoping that some of these nationally themed liveries would be a little bit more exciting. Some of them I think are a little bit lackluster, and it would have been nice if they included a few more that resembled the car's liveries on the grid for this season, like they did with the Aston Martin, the Mercedes, and Alpine. And there's a couple other in there that you could approximate for one of the teams in the F1 season this year. So let's take a look at the setup menu and what options are for changing the setup in this car. This is the default setup, and at least with my equipment I find that the brake pressure is way too high, so I'm probably going to change that. You can see everything you can do with the suspension geometry, the tire pressure and camber, the aero, all of that. And then on the electronics page there's no TC, but you can customize how the MGU-K discharges and regenerates. You can see the regeneration is at 80% on all of the settings for default. Now you're probably going to want to change that so you can get a higher mode that's full discharge for qualifying, where you don't get any regeneration, so you don't get any of that resistance when you're off throttle. And then scale it back to stage 1, where you can do full building, where there's all regeneration and no discharge. So you have 5 different presets you can customize, and of course there's also the automatic option where it will figure it out for you based on what your battery level currently is, and I'm assuming how much left in the lap you have. I don't know if it's going to be so complex that it will account for the length of the race. That might be a little bit too much to ask for. So you can see that I'm going through all these and just customizing it how I think I'm going to want it, so I can get the different modes to reflect what I'm going to want in the situation of a race. For full building, average race pace, overtaking, and qualifying, of course. So now let's take a look at the engine power and torque curves, and you can see there it reaches its peak much lower than some of the previous F1 cars we're used to. So you want to do some short shifting. You don't want to let it reach its rev limiter. If you do run the engine into the higher RPMs, you're going to be missing out on some of that torque that you really need. So we're just trackside now at Interlagos, just taking a look at what these cars look like while they're running on track. And I went through and I tried to select liveries that would most likely represent the cars on the grid this season. As you can see, that one is Alpine from before they got the BWT sponsorship. So that was their livery concept at the beginning of the season, or similar to it. There's also the Mercedes behind them. And there's also on track something that looks analogous to Ferrari right there at the forescreen, and in the background you can see one that looks kind of like Alpha Tauri with the white and grayish blue. There's also one that kind of looks like McLaren in the background there. And of course there are also one that looks like the Aston Martin racing team, and got that nice green. And there was a couple other ones as well that you can, if you squint really hard, it kind of looks like the actual car. But there's no licensed liveries, so we have the liveries that are available, and some of them are really nice, and others just not so much. But if you're selective, you can make the grid look reasonably like this season's F1 grid. So I'm going to hop into the seat of this FRX-22. I've chosen the Aston Martin look-alike livery, and we're going to do a lap around the Red Bull Ring in RaceRoom's leaderboard challenge. Now, if you know RaceRoom well, you'll know that the leaderboard challenge does not have fuel consumption, tire wear. It's set at a specific level and it never changes. So you have optimal tire temperature and condition, but you always carry 50 liters of fuel. You can't reduce that. And I learned from doing this that the battery will always stay fully charged. So there's no DRS, there's no overtake or push to pass option available, but you can manually change your deployment mode to maximum. So that's essentially the same thing as what the overtake button does. It just throws it into the maximum discharge level and gives you as much power as you can possibly get. So it did take several attempts for me to get a clean lap. This car is a little bit challenging to drive. I did have to adjust my throttle and brake sensitivity just a little bit, because it's really easy to put too much power down, and you've really got to ease into it and get some momentum built up before you really give it the throttle. Otherwise you're going to be spinning your tires even in third gear, maybe even fourth if you're using a lot of battery. So let's hop over to AMS2 and take a look at their interpretation of this car on the same track. You'll notice a little bit of details different. I think the finish on the car is a little more glossy in AMS2. It's got more of a shine. You see all the exposed carbon fiber on the wheel there. The gloves look like they got more detail, but it's a much newer title, so considering that. The design is a little bit different. On RaceRoom, the top of the wheel looks like it's a little bit lower, and the display screen gives you different information. And the rear view mirror placement is a little bit different. You can see more of the front wheels in AMS2, and that's obstructed in RaceRoom from the rear view mirrors. And the halo in AMS2, the halo bar is much thinner, so it's easier to see around. And there's also a little bit of difference in the sound, and of course the track has subtlety differences as well. And I'm not talking about the graphics, I'm talking about just the color palette and details on track. So let's compare them both side by side and take a listen. And I do apologize for the reduced quality in sound. It's a little bit compressed because of what I did in the video studio to get this side by side. You can hear the difference. AMS2 sounds a little more clear and crisp, like there's more treble to it. And the engine doesn't sound quite as girthy. I don't know if you can really say that about a 1.6 liter V6, but it definitely sounds like it's a little bit more lower tone in RaceRoom. I think in AMS2 there's also a little bit more of the wind sound that I haven't filtered out. I've turned that pretty much off in RaceRoom. You can notice a couple of differences in the car design. I tried to line them up as evenly as I could and get matching field of view. Not 100% perfect, but it's as good as I can do it. I'm still going to work on it a little bit more, so when I jump from one scene to the other, it feels the same. So I was able to get the same lap time out of both cars, which was, I'm not going to brag, you know, it's nothing impressive, but it was within 1/10 of each other. The difference was it was so much easier to do that lap in AMS2, and it took less practice to get reacquainted with that car. And I think at this point I've spent more time in the FRX-22, and it's still much more challenging to drive. But having said that, it's really satisfying. So go pick it up for yourself and enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.